What if I told you some of the most forgotten cartoons from the 90s weren't just weird or underrated? They were brilliant, philosophical, and even disturbing. These weren't just kid shows. They were animated Trojan horses, sneaking adult-level themes into a format wrapped in action figures and toy commercials. From ancient prophecies and war-torn futures to environmental collapse, political conspiracies, and even metaphors for addiction and genocide. These three shows were light years ahead of their time. And if you were a kid watching, chances are you had no idea how deep it really went. Brace yourself, because we're about to unearth 3 mind-blowing 90s cartoons that you probably forgot about. And once you learn what they're really about, you'll never look at them the same way again. These shows were probably a little too much for the average 8-year-old.
This is Lieutenant J.T. Marsh, member of the Exo Fleet, leader of a small band of E-frame pilots dedicated to freeing humanity from Neo-Sapien rule. We are the Exo Squad.
First up, Exo Squad, aired from 1993 to 1994 and created by Universal Cartoon Studios. Exo Squad was pitched as America's answer to anime juggernauts like Mobile Suit Gundam. But honestly, that comparison sells it short, because this wasn't just another robot suit cartoon. This was a full-blown sci-fi war epic, with the pacing of a prestige drama, the political complexity of Battlestar Galactica, and the emotional gut punches of The Wire, in a cartoon marketed for kids. The premise? Earth's elite soldiers, the Exo Fleet, pilot advanced mech suits called exoframes as they battle a growing rebellion led by the Neo-Sapiens, a genetically engineered race created by humans to be their slaves. That's right, slavery, genocide, rebellion. This show threw kids headfirst into a plot that looked disturbingly like a futuristic civil rights allegory. Somehow, they thought this was a good, safe idea. Can you believe that? The Neo-Sapiens weren't cookie-cutter villains either. They had depth, they had grief. Their leader, Phaeton, was a tragic figure, once peaceful, but radicalized by years of exploitation. His transformation into a genocide dictator was slow, terrifying, and sadly understandable. This wasn't a cartoon about good guys versus bad guys. It was about cycles of oppression, moral uncertainty, and what happens when people are pushed too far. And unlike other cartoons of the time, Exo Squad didn't flinch when it came to consequences. Characters didn't just disappear, they died. Sometimes in brutal, painful, shocking ways. One fan favorite character was literally gunned down on screen, and the camera lingered. No cutaway, no sugarcoating, just a corpse. In a show made for kids. Imagine being 10 years old and watching your favorite character bleed out in a war zone. And it gets darker. In one storyline, humans attempt to wipe out an entire Neo-Sapien colony using a biological weapon, a move that closely mirrors real-world atrocities. The parallels to events like the Holocaust, colonialism, and apartheid weren't just subtext, they were practically on the nose.
I request permission to land to discuss a treaty of friendship between the pirate clans and the Neo-Sapien government.
The creators weren't subtle, because they didn't want to be. This show wasn't about selling toys, it was trying to teach something. And it nearly succeeded. Originally planned as a 3-season show, Exo Squad was setting up an even more expansive universe. Storyboards exist for never-produced episodes exploring Phaeton's descent into madness, a resistance movement inside the Neo-Sapien regime, and even a controversial plotline where humans begin genetically modifying themselves to become more equal to Neo-Sapiens, echoing the eugenics debates of real life. So why did it die? Toy sales, that's it. Despite critical acclaim and a cult following, the show couldn't move enough plastic mech suits at Toys R Us. So halfway through season 2, it was cancelled, just like that. The war ended, not with a bang, but with a marketing report. And here's the really bizarre twist. Exo Squad almost became part of the Aliens vs. Predator universe. Yep, there were early talks between Universal and Fox to include xenomorphs and predators in a planned spin-off, which would have linked the show to one of the darkest sci-fi franchises ever made.
You know the standing orders against joyriding. The Neo-Sapiens don't appreciate it. Just who authorized this flight?
Concept art even existed for a crossover episode, but after the cancellation, it was quietly buried. The cast, though, they took it seriously. Robbie Benson, yes, The voice of the Beast in Disney's Beauty and the Beast played J.T. Marsh, the show's lead. He didn't take the role for the paycheck. In interviews, he said Exo Squad was the most emotionally challenging role he'd done for animation, because it felt like something with real-world weight. We weren't doing a cartoon, he said. We were doing a warning. And maybe that was the problem. Exo Squad wasn't colorful or silly enough to be a hit with the kids, and it was too ahead of its time for adults to notice. But make no mistake, it was one of the smartest, boldest, and most disturbing things ever aired on American children's television. And if that's what was passed for a kids show in the sci-fi world, what the heck was going on over at Disney? Because next up is a candy-colored cartoon that disguised its dark secrets behind bouncing bears and magic juice. Alright, so after a heavy war drama like Exo Squad, you'd think we're safe jumping into something light and fluffy, right?
Gummy bears bouncing here and there and everywhere. High adventure that's beyond compare. They are the Gummy Bears.
I mean, come on. Disney's Adventures of the Gummy Bears? Sounds like a fruit snack commercial. Cute, colorful bears bouncing around on magic juice? What could possibly be disturbing about that? A lot, actually. Because Gummy Bears, which ran from 1985 to 1991, wasn't just the first real animated series developed by Disney Television, it was also weirdly deep, insanely political, and way more adult than anyone remembers. It was practically medieval Game of Thrones in bear form. The show takes place in a fictional land called Dunwin, a kingdom filled with knights, sorcerers, and a ruling class teetering on the edge of tyranny. The Gummy Bears, an ancient race, once ruled vast cities and harnessed powerful magic, but now they're hiding underground like a persecuted minority, hunted for their knowledge, their technology, and their juice. Yes, gummy berry juice, the brightly colored liquid that gives them superpowers. It's essentially a controlled substance, and every villain in the show wants to mass produce it. Think about it. This juice is like magical steroids, and multiple episodes show black market attempts to harvest and weaponize it. One villain literally tries to enslave the Gummy Bears to force them into constant production. That's dark. But it gets even more unsettling when you realize the gummies are a metaphor. The show constantly hints that they're the last of a great civilization.
Wow! Gummy bears! Wait, I won't hurt you!
One whose history has been wiped clean by human fear and imperialism. The humans in the show either mythologize the gummies or want to exploit them. Sound familiar? It mirrors real-world stories of indigenous populations. Forgotten, driven underground, and feared for their knowledge. And the tone? Shockingly somber for a bouncy Disney cartoon. There are episodes about genocide, memory erasure, and xenophobia. In one storyline, an ancient gummy named Sir Thornberry wakes from cryogenic sleep to find his entire society is gone. He literally breaks down in grief. Another gummy falls into depression after losing her home and ends up wandering into enemy territory to die alone. Even the animation had an eerie realism. Disney poured money into this show, like feature film levels money. They hired top-tier animators and gave them a medieval fantasy playground to go wild in. The result? A visual tone that felt more like the Black Cauldron than DuckTales. And speaking of DuckTales, Gummy Bears walked so DuckTales could run. Gummy Bears was Disney's first major animated series after a long drought. If it had flopped, Disney would have pulled the plug on TV animation completely. No Darkwing Duck, no Tailspin, no Disney Afternoon. But here's the real kicker. The show wasn't made for kids, not originally. According to former Disney execs, Gummy Bears was first greenlit because then CEO Michael Eisner's son was obsessed with the candy. But once the project landed in the hands of showrunner Jim McGaughan, a veteran sound editor turned story editor, it evolved. He turned it into a socio-political allegory filled with references to the Cold War, class struggle, and underground resistance movements.
He's probably some fly-by-night.
Well, if you ask me, it's high time someone started cleaning up this forest.
Yeah, I agree.
McGaughan later said, "I was writing fairy tales for 8-year-olds, but coding them for 38-year-olds. Even the cast was elite. June Foray, the voice of Grammy Gummy, was voice acting royalty. She'd played Rocky the Flying Squirrel, Witch Hazel, Granny from Looney Tunes, and she could switch between loving grandmother and fearsome matriarch on a dime. One of her best performances, an episode where Grammy is captured and interrogated. Foray plays her quiet defiance, like a war prisoner who's endured the worst. It was chilling. Another standout voice, Lorenzo Music, the voice of Tommy Gummy, who also voiced Garfield. But off mic, Music had serious thoughts about the tone of the show. In interviews, he said Gummy Bears wasn't a comedy, it was a tragedy with moments of cheerfulness. And if you rewatch it as an adult, he was totally right. By the later seasons, the show stopped even pretending to be for kids. Magic got darker, villains got more violent, there's even a multi-part section involving ancient gummy tech being used to create living weapons, sentient machines powered by fear and pain. What was this show? And maybe the most disturbing part? The final episode ends with the Gummies finally re-establishing contact with other colonies, but still having to hide from humanity. It's not a happy ending, it's survival. The message? Some civilizations never get justice, just the chance to endure. So yeah, not exactly your average kid's cartoon. But if a medieval bear cartoon secretly tackled racism, colonialism, and magical warfare, what happens when a show doesn't even try to hide its darkness and just drops you into a full-blown apocalypse? Because the Pirates of the Dark Water might be the grimmest cartoon ever made, and nobody talks about it. Now we head to the darkest corner of the forgotten cartoon vault, a place so bleak, so brutally beautiful, that even die-hard 90s kids barely remember it.
It's high adventure with the Pirates of Dark Water.
We're talking about the Pirates of Dark Water, a cartoon that didn't just flirt with danger, it drowned in it. Originally aired in 1991 and produced by Hanna-Barbera, yes, the same studio behind the Flintstones, the series was nothing like anything else on TV. This was an epic, serialized fantasy about environmental collapse, addiction, slavery, cosmic horror, and the literal end of the world. Set on an alien planet Myrrh, the show follows Ren, a prince-turned-pirate, as he tries to collect 13 magical treasures to stop a spreading, living substance known only as dark water. And no, this isn't metaphorical pollution. Dark water is a sentient black sludge that eats entire cities, possesses living creatures, and turns people into monsters. Imagine Mad Max, Dune, and Lovecraftian horror all jammed into a kid's cartoon. But here's the kicker. It was never finished. We never got all 13 treasures. The show was canceled after just 21 episodes. The world literally ended with no resolution. And the story behind it? Even darker. The production was cursed from the start. Pirates of Dark Water was originally launched as a 5-part miniseries called Dark Water, with a massive budget for the time, around $500,000 per episode. That's Disney movie money.
It's good we stopped to clean ship and make repairs. We could all use a break.
It's some break. I'd rather be fighting a pack of pirates.
And it was all poured into an in-house Hanna-Barbera elite team of animators and storyboard artists, many of whom came from Japan. The goal? To prove that American TV animation could rival anime. The result? Gorgeous. Painterly backdrops, gritty fluid animation, intense action sequences, all hand-drawn and dark as hell. But there was a price. Behind the scenes, writers were fighting censors constantly. According to series creator David Krishner, the network was deeply uncomfortable with how dark the show was becoming. In one episode, a character is eaten alive by dark water, and the camera lingers on their twisted, melting face as they scream. In another, slaves are forced to mine treasure while being whipped, and the heroes just walk away because they're outnumbered. One network note reportedly read, "Can you make the environmental apocalypse more fun?" Spoiler alert, they couldn't. The cast was just as elite, and just as blindsided by the tone. Ren was voiced by George Newbern, who also played Superman in Justice League. He once said that the show felt more like an HBO drama than a cartoon. Meanwhile, the villainous pirate Bloth, literally a massive bloated sea monster captain, was voiced by Brock Peters, known for playing Tom Robinson in To Kill a Mockingbird. Peters brought such a chilling menace to the role that kids wrote letters saying they were scared to watch the show alone.
Enough of this dancing about! The old man hid the 13 treasures of rule within the realm of dark water, and I mean to have them!
You won't get any help from me.
What?
Even side characters weren't safe. Laz, the roguish ex-pirate ally, was voiced by Hector Elizondo, and Tulla, the shape-shifting ecomancer, was voiced by Jodie Benson, the same actress who played Ariel in The Little Mermaid. Yep, Ariel went from singing in the sea to summoning earthquakes and disintegrating dark sludge demons. Benson later admitted she had no idea how serious the show was until it aired. She said in one interview, "I thought I was recording for a fun pirate cartoon, and then I watched an episode where my character was tortured. And just when you thought it couldn't get darker, the lore of Mer, the doomed planet, was slowly being revealed to be an ancient warning about humanity. In scripts for the never-aired third season, it's revealed that the dark water came from a cataclysm created by the people of Mer themselves, a failed attempt to draw energy from other dimensions. They opened a rift, and the black sludge came through. It's cosmic rot like nuclear fallout, but alive." The writers were planning an ending where even if Ren found all 13 treasures, the planet still might not survive. Their message? Sometimes you can't reverse the damage, only delay it. But none of that ever aired. Why? Because once again, toy sales. Hanna-Barbera and Hasbro banked on Pirates of Dark Water being a merch machine. They released an action figure line, a board game, and even a video game. But kids, they weren't biting. Maybe because the show was too intelligent, too slow, too dark, too real. So it got the axe.
The next treasure lies in Miragon.
There's no turning back, Ios.
Hold tight, we have rapids ahead.
The Maelstrom!
No final battle, no epic ending, just silence. And today, it's one of the most criminally underappreciated animated series of the 90s, a visual masterpiece with a message that still hits hard. Because Pirates of Dark Water wasn't just about saving a world, it was a warning about losing ours. So there you have it, 3 forgotten 90s cartoons that were way too smart, too dark, that you may have forgotten about them until now. A war epic about genetically engineered rebellion, a medieval fable hiding commentary on genocide, and a pirate saga that ends with environmental doom. These weren't just shows, they were warnings in disguise. But here's the real question. How many more are hiding in plain sight? Because next time, we have even more behind the scenes nostalgia about your favorite or even forgotten 80s and 90s shows and movies. So if you thought this was wild, you haven't seen anything yet. Like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us which one of these shows messed you up the most. We'll see you next time.